subcommittee to get some clarifying information, and then we had Dr. Holman on the call as well as several other staff on the call as well in that discussion. From that discussion, we had LPA do a little bit more work. Per the board's discussion last time, we wanted to make sure we focused them in the areas that we really needed to prioritize at this point. And so LPA is here, Carlos Constantino and Sarah Flowers are here this evening with some findings. I also invited several staff today because I wanted the board to be able to have access to the folks that are in the trenches in each of these facilities doing the work to make sure that we're adequately representing what the needs are with respect to some of these recommendations. So I've got our athletic director, Ms. Ariola, here today in case any questions come up about any of those. Technology director, Dr. Amanda Holman is with us tonight. John Thomas is with us, who does child nutrition and maintenance in the event that we have any questions about those areas of the organization. Is with questions about ECPD. Director of Transportation come up about any of those aspects of our organization. So just wanted to provide as much information as possible and access to all the folks that would know best in the organization on day to day to give the board the best information that we can provide. And so in your packet, you've got that Carlos is going to take us through based on what they've been up to the last 7 or 8 days or so.
Since the last board meeting, I did get reading glasses. That's fine. You know, I got these Home Depot. They have the best ones. Okay, sorry, a little bit of information. Good evening. Again, Mr. Toscano, board president, board members, again, I would appreciate y'all giving us an opportunity to present to y'all this evening. Like Mr. Toscano indicated, we went through a couple of exercises per the last board meeting on the 8th. Okay, so what we've been up to. So as we indicated, we had a board meeting on July the 8th. Just a little more information prior to that, like a couple hours before that, we also had a kickoff post-occupancy evaluation meeting, just to give you all some heads up with Mr. Toscano. What that is we're going to go through several exercises where we're going to review with the users their thoughts and their opinions about the use with tradition. I know y'all been in there not really 2 years due to the pandemic, but we will be going through an exercise of getting some information from tradition in relation to the users of things that they liked and maybe they didn't like, and then we want to make sure that we follow through with that. Again, subcommittee meeting was on July the 8th. I know that Mr. Scott then generated a invitation for a facilities subcommittee via a virtual meeting that y'all reviewed. I think there's more information relating to questions that Mr. Brian had and Mr. Mesquita in relation to the facilities committee. And then after the meeting that we had on the 8th, y'all had several concerns about some of the, but y'all needed more information in relation to several of the campuses, Oak Crest, Highland Forest, Legacy, Heritage, and also Cass High School. So LPA then, we offered to do that, to go and dig in a little bit more and to review and walk those campuses. So on the 13th, I met Mr. Thomas and Ms. Gonzalez and also Mr. Fuller, and I'm sorry, Keith and also Julio.
I'm sorry.
Good? Okay, so again, on the 13th, we walked Highland Forest and Oak Crest and reviewed again conditions of what we provided on the last 4 renovations, the new addition. Again, understanding the site, a little more site depth, where the building would go to a certain extent. Also the review of the conditions of the site so that we had a better idea, not only to present to you all as far as scope, but also for a better price and estimate going into this. And so we did the same thing as well on the 14th, the next day. We went and toured. We also met with Dr. Holman at CAST, and we also heard from her and got some information from her in relation to her ideas and her idea of the curriculum at CAST for the new machine shop and construction trades and also health science. On the 14th, we went and toured Legacy and Heritage. I am aware that that may be a scope that may not be on the board. On the bottom, I have information if you all want to ask in relation to that scope of work. Again, John, Stevie, and Julio and Keith walked that job list, and so we sort of have an understanding of what the scope is. So on Highland Forest, again, our observation was basically insufficient queuing space. This was something that we kind of walked into when we got to the site. I believe it was Keith or Julio that said, look, we also have a concern about the queuing space of parents mainly picking up where we're queuing, and there you can see the area in that blue right in the middle, that's the main entry. And you can see there's not a lot of queuing space. So I'm assuming that queuing space goes further down, which would be south towards that neighborhood. And so, so we said, okay, well, let's study that. Let's provide an estimate and information to the board in relation to that cost. Also, what we also addressed was the inequitable facilities relating to Salado, Sinclair, Pecan Valley, and Harmony. That's what started this whole conversation on. And then also, we're relating to that, improvements to the classrooms in relation to having a pre-KK edition, which has their own restrooms, and also creating the co-lab spaces. So what we came up with, this is basically similar to what we did at Sinclair. What we did at Sinclair, because again, they had concern with queuing in relation to the entry of the parent drop-off, which was on the left-hand side. We then created at Sinclair basically a drive loop, okay, as you say. So it's a clockwise drive. Comes all the way around back to basically the bus loop area. You always want to drive up so that your kids are on your right-hand side. So you're dropping off on the passenger side. And so what we had to do is we had to split that. We had to put, bus used to be in that circular area and the parent was on the top. We're flipping it. Again, this is just information for y'all in relation to the scope in relation to our drive. Just so you all are aware, when we address that drive, just as we did with Sinclair, we have to probably, the city's gonna make us address a detention pond because we've now affected the impervious area of that area. So you've got now water that's draining rather than going into the ground. So there's gonna be costs in relation to that. And you can see that on the bottom, which will be on the southeast corner in relation to the potential for a detention pond. So that's part of the scope. The area in the blue, that's just a proposed location of the classroom. That whole area, potential location, we can study that. What we want to do is just try and see where it makes more sense in relation to cost and also the path of these little kiddos. We don't want to push them too far out because this is pre-KK, so we need to think about that. I will indicate, you can see, if I go back, you can see there is a fire lane all the way around right now. Okay, so if you're going clockwise, there's a fire lane on the east side going north and south, and then it's what we call a hammerhead right at the bottom, which is where that loop is. The fire truck would turn around, be able to come back around, and then go back towards the north. Our first, I guess our recommendation, or not a recommendation, but just the first cost-wise would be the new addition, the collab spaces. Collab spaces are indicated on the bottom left. We did look at that with Stevie and John, and we felt like that was the best place, the less invasive area for collab spaces. So that orange area would be our suggestion for collab spaces. The budget costs that we addressed, I added probably about $400,000 or $500,000 because we had, again, the flooring was a little bit larger. We're looking at probably about, it could be $300,000 to $400,000 in flooring. So we indicated on that scope, co-lab space in the existing wings, the construct a pre-K classroom addition like we did at the previous four classroom campuses, replacing flooring throughout, excluding the admin area. We've already done the admin area. We're still talking about probably about 65 to 70,000 square feet of flooring. So it's a lot of flooring. When you pull flooring out, you've got to pull a base out and then put your flooring rubber base back in. So there is a cost. Energy efficient lighting, basically LEDs that we talked about was in the original discussion. Ceiling mounted projectors, the fire lane revision. So this is, I'm going to get a little bit more of the weeds of this. So we have an existing fire lane. We can make it work, or we can keep that fire lane and then separate the new addition and just have a large canopy, similar to what we did at the Performing Arts Center between the PAC and the band hall. We can make that work and not have to build that loop if the board stated that, okay, no, there is no concern about the queuing. Or we could connect it if we wanted to and then provide the loop. So in the base, what I call base bid, I provided cost to be able to address you'll have some small areas of asphalt, which will be more of a play area, but it'll also be a fire truck path to get to the furthest east side of that classroom addition for fire hose lane. If you don't do the loop is also nice for fire truck access, and that would help with that. The alternate would be the detention pond and also the drive. I've plugged in there about $1 million. I did talk to Kenny Brody at the City of Smyrna. He sent me an email. That's probably high. He was thinking about $700,000 to $750,000. I believe Sinclair was up around 300. That's probably twice as long as Sinclair. It's very long. So basically on our budget and our scope, what I've addressed there, bless you, the base bid again will be 5.3 and then about $750,000 $50,000 for that loop. Okay? Any questions on that? Yes, sir.
Yeah. When you talk about replacing flooring,
Yes,
you're
sir.
going to replace the existing flooring, or you're going to rip that up and take it down to concrete?
We are going to, it's all VCT, and we were going to remove the VCT, remove the rubber base, and come back with an LVT. It's a luxury vinyl called luxury vinyl tile. You don't have to wax that.
Okay.
And that's what they're looking at for non-maintenance purposes.
Okay.
It's what we did at the other four schools,
Okay.
is we provided an LVT product. Yes, sir. The only place you would have to be, obviously, would be the admin, which we already did. The gymnasium, cafeteria would have to be replaced as well.
Yeah.
We also have a cost in here for the carpet. I don't know if it had new carpet at Highland Forest. I believe we did at Heritage, but we have a replacement of carpet as well. You know, if you do it, it's all going to be nice. You might as well do the carpet as well, just so it looks the same, being a nice product. So that would include removal and then the installation of new flooring. Yes, sir.
So, on the fire lane, that's the behind, in the back side of the buildings, right? On
Yes,
the east
sir.
side?
Where it says Highland,
Okay.
going up and down, that's the fire lane right now.
And so the fire lane would stay there, or would be moved? to the back?
Base bid with the fire lane could stay there, and the new addition, we would just have to build to the east of that fire lane. And we would build a large canopy so the fire truck could get through, but we'd also have some sort of coverage from the kids walking, because it would not be a connected building like we've done in the other four schools. It would be separate. And then the kids would walk underneath that canopy and get to the main center classroom area. If we were to remove that, if we were to address that fire lane, we could build a loop all the way around, and that, I believe, would take care of our fire access on the backside of that, of all
In
that.
that scenario, the building would be connected. The addition would be connected.
That is correct, yes, sir. There's a little bit, just, there's a little bit concern of having these little bitty kiddos having to go out in the elements and, rain or it's cold or something. So, being as transparent as I can with you guys, that's not what we have at the other campuses. We are connected, excluding, the existing building at Harmony. There was an existing building, I think it was a 5th grade building.
Carlos, one other question.
Yes, sir.
Do either one of the new addition locations have some advantages in relationship to the detention pond?
No, I think we have plenty of room back there, Mr. Bryant. I believe if you, and I didn't graphically show this because it was so hard to draw that. I mean, actually somebody else drew it up, but that little drive just in PowerPoint was difficult. So what we would do, we would kind of chop a little corner off of that drive and just pick it up. The detention pond also wants to be both on the bottom so that all that water from the areas. There is an advantage, and again, we want to be able to have the opportunity to discuss it. There are playground equipment in every single area outside of those 3 classroom additions. And if there is an opportunity to build it maybe further down below where it says potential location on the bottom, that large hardtop area, and still have a canopy to get to the schools, the cost of playground equipment is crazy these days. It's probably, to relocate, probably to remove and relocate, it's probably $75,000, $100,000. It's very expensive. There's some trees around there, and then also we've got to look at the fire line, also the hydrants. We had to relocate those at Harmony, and we also had to relocate it at St. Clair as well.
I was just wondering if you built on that top location, would the pond need to be smaller because you had more area for absorption than if you built on?
No, it's still impervious area. It's still like, they just go by square footage of area of roof, basically. So it's really not going to change the building where you locate it. They're going to go by the calculations of you are affecting that site with water that is flowing off a roof and not being allowed to penetrate the ground, and you're going to have to hold that water because these other folks down here have concerns, and that's the reason why the city will make them.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Okay, Oak Crest. Again, our observation walked with John, Stevie, and Keith and Julio. Same thing. Now, again, this is another item that came up when we walked there was a possible queuing space issue. I showed you all of that entire site so you had an idea. That's obviously Sulphur Springs Road going west and east up on the top on the north end. What I've been told, there's also queuing issues with parents being on Sulphur Springs Road as well. And so that was one of the things that we just want to bring to y'all's attention and wanted to address with y'all a solution for that. Again, insufficient queuing space. The drop off is, I think everybody knows, it's that large building just to the left where it says Oak. That top building, that's right in that corner is the entry, right to the left where it says Oak. And then also the same inequitable facilities related to Solano St. Clair for the pre-K and K admissions and also the co-ed census. This area, if y'all aren't aware, Oak Crest is the same floor plan as Highland Forest, except that it's mirrored, okay? Which is nice because then we can keep the parent drop-off area where it's at because you're on the end of that loop, basically. Like at Highland Forest, since the parent drop-off was on the other side, you couldn't cross over to get on the right-hand side of the existing parent drop-off area. So this worked really well, and I think it then helped us with, and I guess for our conversation, what we all felt, we don't have to do a loop here. We can keep that fire lane there, and we can provide just a loop. We already have to get a loop to get to the classroom addition on the backside. So what we would do is the parents would come through going north and south, go through the gates that goes towards the back, make a loop around, go back up north, and then come back towards the east and be at the same location for your parent drop-off area. That will create a lot of stack space there. And then also we have then our access to be able to get to that end of that south classroom addition for your fire trucks. So you're kind of killing 2 birds with 1 stone there in relation to that layout. Again, the proposed location of the addition, its potential location, we felt again per the existing conditions. There's actually a well there, a water well, that is a secondary source for your sewer treatment plant. Yeah. And then also in the middle classroom addition, there's portable. There is a playground area, and then the one on the right, there's portables there. So we found like cost-wise that the one on the left where we show is probably going to be the best location. We'll still study it, but we feel like it's probably the best location in relation to cost and not having to address any existing conditions. The same thing again with the co-lab spaces in relation to our proposed locations, and then really the same scope, introducing collabs in the spaces, the pre-KK edition, replacing flooring throughout. They do not have new flooring other than just the entry lobby at Oakcrest. And then energy efficient lighting, your ceiling projectors, the new pickup and drop off area, and then also I don't know if we're gonna have to have a detention pond, but I indicated that we'd have to get with, I think that's Bear County, I think we'd have to get with Bear County. Again, I had to raise this cost because of that loop area and because of the concerns with the queuing that they discussed with us. And so I have probably added about $500,000 to $600,000. The flooring again is going to be a huge cost. Again, you're looking at probably 70,000 square feet. You know, it could be $4 to $5 a square foot. I mean, that's just estimate wise. So the flooring is going to be a cost. Lighting, HVAC controls also as well. Actually, you don't have HVAC controls. So this one we applied a little bit more in relation to that, because we feel like the drive is probably going to be base bid. There is no alternative to make the loop because it helps with the drive on the backside for your fire department. Any questions on this campus?
Carlos, both of these scenarios add eight classrooms to each of those.
There is 12 classrooms in the addition, but net is 8 because we're removing
So
4.
that's roughly 160 student
Yes, sir.
additional capacity at Highland Forest and Oak Crest. Using this approach, which, you know, in the future could give us some opportunity to make some adjustments, because that would make Highland Forest and Oak Crest have similar capacity for addition. So just wanted to make sure the board was aware of that.
Yeah, it was right there. Well, I apologize. I should have brought that up as well.
So tell me again why there's a net of 8 when you're building 12, is that because you're gonna?
Because we're removing 4 classrooms in the addition for co-lab spaces.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, the highlighted, Steve, you see the highlighted little blocks?
Little
Yeah,
orange
taking
areas.
those and making collaborative learning spaces for that audit classrooms. So they're losing 4 in the building, but adding 12 outside, so that day.
They're not standard classrooms, they're not losing, they're still educational areas. And they work really well. When Stevie and I and John walked in, they're perfectly set up in relation to, got water already there, sinks are there, literally just have to take one wall off, put new flooring, paint it, and put all of the technology, and it works really well. Okay, CAST. So after our walkthrough at Oakcrest, we went to the CAST High School and we met with Dr. Holman and discussed her view of the curriculum for both the health science and also construction trades. We reviewed the existing conditions and what they were using for all the classrooms. Most of them were going to be part of CAST High School. And so we reviewed the scope, and her and Dr. Holman, you can express anything you want as well too on this conversation. So we reviewed her intent in relation to health science, which would include a nursing aid program, a medical assistant program, dental program, pharmacy program, and also farm tech. And then on the construction trades were construction management, plumbing, electrical, and HVAC. We felt like it would be necessary to provide a program for this because there are all these secondary spaces. And so, and that was really it. I think nothing really in relation to any work in the existing classroom, the existing building. It was just this new building. And so we addressed, you can see the program in relation to that. We had areas for the shop, tool storage, material storage, medical lab itself. We also had the health medical storage, classrooms. Per our conversation, she felt like maybe having about four classrooms for that multi-usable space would be easier as far as a larger space. Maybe there's some secondary partitions that close up. She felt like a large space would work. And then she could have these curriculum spaces in relation to those areas. And then obviously restrooms, staff restrooms, and also the building support. That's all your custodial, that's your mechanical, your electrical rooms, things like that. So we looked at and then also your circulation and your walls, you're looking at about 15,700 square feet. She felt like it would be beneficial to have 4 classrooms, which fed for both the curriculums on the construction trades. So so she could have a class in relation to plumbing, electrical, HVAC, and construction trades. And then also the possibility of what I call a saddlebag, maybe having those inner spaces, having the two construction trades and help maybe on the outside, and then you can use those 4 classrooms together as a multi-usable area for those classroom areas. To get your bearings, the band practice area is up on the top right. I also have the Cass High School entry. You can see the arrow. So the potential area that we would look at would be between the tennis court parking lot on the north and the new little gym that we renovated for, I believe it's welding. That would be in that area there where we would potentially address that. Perfect area because it's close to the high school. There is a nice path. We've got pedestrian access across 1628. We feel like it's close to the high school, and we feel like that's probably the best place to put it. It's a flat area, and we also have access to the back. If we have access for deliveries for construction materials, even if we want to work outside, we have that little hammerhead to get to the back of that old gym. So we felt like this was really where the building potentially could be. I've added some photos per Dr. Holman. I believe she visited, is it Warren?
Yeah.
Dr. Holman? And so she visited this high school and took some photographs. And I know there's been some conversations with Dr. Holman, I believe maybe Mr. Bryan, in relation to what that idea was in relation to that sort of starter program of the curriculum. And see that these are some of the things that she noticed and they've worked on. They basically just are doing framing, wood and studs, maybe installing rough-ins for electrical. So these are some of the photographs, and then also probably doing some plumbing installation where they're installing plumbing fixtures, setting up maybe some of the framing and you see on the wall, and then you get an area of the shop layout in relation to that. So that's sort of what again, our conversation with Dr. Holman in relation to that scope of work. I know, Mr. Bryan, you had a question about really what the thoughts were for that curriculum. So that's basically what we were talking about. If you all would like to have further conversation with that, you can, but that's basically what we review with Dr. Holman. Questions?
Yeah. Farm tech, as opposed to the program over in the ag department?
I'm sorry, I think the D and E are the same thing. It's a pharmacy and it's a pharmacy technician program.
Oh, farm.
Farm with a PH. It's supposed to be a
Farm with
PH.
PH.
Sorry.
Okay.
No.
What did I say? Okay. Cool. Oh, my fault. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
My apologies. Anything else, Dr. Holman, that you'd like to add? Is that really, I think that's all that we have talked about, correct?
Yeah, I think on the pictures, it really explains, so those frame outs are so those students can learn how to do electrical and plumbing within both the residential and a commercial setting. But those frames could also be taken down should we need to change that multi-purpose space at any point in time. And then it would just look like that big open lab that was in a couple of pictures over. So all of their labs looked like the large open one that is right there on the right-hand side.
So those studded walls and all that stuff, they stay there permanently? They're not taken down and rebuilt as kids learn? They're just all there all the time, correct?
They could be in that specific lab because they've got such advanced trades. They leave them up because that's their electrical lab. So that's one lab dedicated solely to electrical. But if they wanted to, the carpentry kids could tear them down and put them back up. It's that type of flexibility that they have in the facility. But for their purposes, they were leaving them up at all times. And then they had, like these pictures on the left here, those were stands they made that were mobile so the students could learn how to do plumbing for sinks and toilets and such on these mobile stands, semi-mobile stands, I guess. But they could be reused year after year, so.
Dr. Holman was, just refresh my memory, I think I saw Warren, that group there on the news. Don't they do they build something every year or?
They do the tiny homes, yes.
Okay.
They do the little mobile tiny homes. The students will build those. It's a 2-year project for them.
And what do they sell them after?
I think they auction them off.
And they do that here in this?
Yes, in these labs, they do them. They have an outdoor space that once they reach a certain level, on the production of it, they'll put them outside and utilize them, but yes.
Thank you.
Yes,
Does any of this free up that building that's on the west side of the south campus where we're currently doing some carpentry?
it could free it up. It would depend on the numbers. These would obviously be course labs for probably our more advanced level students. So I would envision that lab on the south end of the campus would remain for maybe our entry level courses, so that they could get the basic skills needed to move on.
Thank you.
Okay, and then, thank you. And then we also talked about, and I wanted to just visually show you guys the base one, which would really be the new exterior awnings and canopies for exterior service work for the buses. And then, which you can see in the blue area, so that basically just be some large canopy awnings that where they can get out in the sun and they can have the ability to work on the buses, not only on the inside through the bays, but also on the exterior as well. And then also, Mr. Toscano had mentioned to me there are some areas that probably some offices have been built in the past that need AC, and so we plug in put AC in those small offices. I believe there's some storage rooms as well. So we feel like just doing that and both the AC, we'd be fine with the $800,000. The revised cost estimate really is related to Highland Forest and Oakcrest. Nothing's changed on the two elementary schools and middle school. In relation to, again, the Highland Forest project, the Childhood Center, collaborative learning spaces. I don't know if we want to get into it, but y'all are more than welcome to address. We really didn't find any places, and maybe Stevie could talk, but we really didn't find any learning spaces. I think we're still in the middle of really finding out what that curriculum is in relation to collaborative spaces at Highland Forest and Oakcrest. I know there was a school that you had mentioned in Edgewood, I believe.
For the outside learning
Yes,
spaces,
ma'am. Yeah.
the campuses they visited, so, we look to see where, but we really need more.
What are you talking about?
The outside learning spaces?
Outdoor learning
Outdoor,
spaces in
yeah.
elementaries?
Mhm.
Yeah, that's not being addressed here. That's through a grant pre-KSA.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. Projectors, instruments, and lighting, flooring, et cetera. And then I plugged in, that was $5.3 million, and then I plugged in, again, I'll be editing this, but $1 million for the detention pond and the drive at Highland Forest. That's gonna come down about $750,000. Oakcrest, again, relating to the additional flooring, we have, because remember, I added a little bit more because of the drive. Most of the cost for the new drive at Highland Forest is in that $1 million. There's not a lot we have to do if you don't take that and go with the base bid. Maybe a little bit of asphalt, but we'll be able to reach that building on the east side with the fire lane in the center. So that's why we have a little bit more cost on Oakcrest, because the drive, that loop is in the base bid, if that makes sense. And then again, the health professions building that we talked about, 4.5, security vestibules, and then the renovations at base 1, which provided a total of $159,250. Mr. Toscano wanted me to add $5 million for land acquisition, which is a grand total of $164,250,000. Any questions?
Is the land acquisition, is that for the new schools?
Land acquisition would be for sites for the new schools that are in the proposal. And land acquisition could be part of the referendum. It is considered an academic expenditure because of its purpose, so this one.
We didn't have that the other day though, when we,
Yeah, I think when we went into closed session, some discussion the board had about that and gave some direction.
okay, I probably, that's what I was wanting to know. I don't see PD on here. So what did you find out about that?
Her conversations with Mr. Toscano, We had it on the previous one, you are correct. Our thoughts are, I had, I believe, on the scope, we had the warehouse with the PD included in that. Our proposed location would be just south of the cast, where we would probably demo the existing building, the buildings, and then create a new warehouse and police department, which would point towards 6028, along the going west and east, south of the cast, which would be just north of the maintenance building. I had we plugged in about $7.8 million. We felt like that was probably high. What I did in the original, I added together when the PD was a separate building, and it's really not apples to apples. Square footage, wise, you're probably still looking at about 15,000 square feet. I'd have to get back to you on the budget. I think we briefly talked probably $5.5 million possibly for that. It really also depends on the scope within that area. So if you move child nutrition, there are some costs in relation to putting some large freezers and coolers in those buildings. So there is some cost, but mainly it's more of a storage area. The PD would probably have a couple thousand square feet, which would have a small, offices and then all conference room entry, et cetera.
I can speak a little bit to PD, and Chief's here. Chief, feel free to please add anything that I say. But in talking to Chief, obviously, I think we all know that it used to be the central office once upon a time. And so that room is a building's Pier B, and it's been repurposed to meet its current need multiple times over its generation. And so the space, roughly 2,000 square feet, is adequate. It's just that some of the spaces as they're utilized within that space don't meet the standard per DPS and
CGIS.
the other governing agencies. And so, for example, Chief tells me about his dispatch has to be secured and it can't be accessible to the public. So we have our dispatcher in an area of that building where they're generally not accessible to the public, but if we have somebody coming into an interview room, which we do our student due process hearings in this space because we can record and it's soundproof and that sort of thing, they pass by the dispatcher's office. So they have access technically to the dispatcher. So it's a technicality. But in addition to that old building, you can hear through the walls. So from a confidentiality standpoint, it's not optimal. So the space works, it just doesn't rise to the level of being at the standard that the governing bodies would expect. And so there's several spaces that kind of would meet that criteria. They're adequate, the size is good, but there's some needs in terms of what it can do for its function with respect to the industry's expectations. So another one would be his evidence storage room. They have all kinds of evidence in there, and whether they're explosive or aerosols or inhalants or contraband of any sort, there's a standard for ventilation. That particular evidence storage room is the old vault. It's just an old vault. So it doesn't really have the ventilation that rises to the standard of what it should have in the industry. So the space is adequate, it works, it has all the pieces and parts that it needs. If we were to get it to the standard that it needed to be, it couldn't be in that existing facility. It would need to be probably redesigned, as Carlos is suggesting. And so Chief, feel free to add anything to that if I missed anything that we talked about.
No, more or less you got covered everything that we talked about. And then a storage space. We're running out of storage space for our traffic control equipment, and I'm talking about the big barrels for our football games and special events, our golf carts that we spend $5,000-6,000 on, cannot be outside in the weather. So we're getting cramped in there. We're making it work right now, but as growth continues, we're going to be real tight space.
So the storage that Chief's referring to is not in that same building. It's the shared custodial warehouse, supply warehouse. It's that building behind it. So Chief has one end of it, and custodial has they share.
We share, yeah. We share the middle part of it, and the north end of it is the custodial office. But the main topics here are the security of our dispatching information system. When we have hearings on the kids, or we even have irate parents that we need to meet with, we don't want them at our schools, so we meet in our PD. It's recorded and it's more secure there. So I gotta make sure that I'm standing by dispatch, because if we have an incident going on at the schools, we definitely don't want people listening what's happening to our kids at that time to take control. So that's becoming an issue. The other thing is accreditation is a good time. We're looking at Texas Police Chief Association has an accreditation program for law enforcement for municipality, university police, and school district police departments. And right now we're in the starting stages getting into that accreditation program and follow what they call the 166 best police practices, which are recognized by the state. And they have guidelines that we have to follow, and of course, security and facility security is one of the best practices that we need to adhere to be fully accredited by the state of Texas Chiefs of Police Association, which God willing will be the first ISD in San Antonio.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
Yes, sir, thank you.
Good.
So, Ms. Ariola, we talked a little bit about the facility study committee had identified after talking to the principals at the junior highs that one of the challenges they have with extracurricular activities is at times, particularly during soccer season, that they have trouble getting a second game, right? And so when you and I talk a little bit about that, and you share what you shared with me about kind of what you guys as a district of 9 schools that compete have kind of done to mitigate that, and kind of what you shared with me that I didn't know about the other schools in our district with respect to lights at their middle school facilities.
So, would we like to have lights at the middle school? Who wouldn't, right? But there's not another middle school that we play within our district that has middle school lights. And so we rearranged our schedules around, we adopted Church Cibolo, so 2 more middle schools. A couple of years ago, we decided in order to do that, that we would also play on some Saturdays so that everyone was getting to play everybody. We weren't just handpicking, you play these 6 teams and you play those 6 teams, because we can't play every sport 9 weeks throughout the year. And so we've moved to Saturdays. When it comes to soccer, we usually play 3 or 4 Saturdays each year. It just depends on leap year or not. Some years are 3, some years are 4. And we typically we play the 8th grade game first. Not that 7th grade is not important, but we get the 8th grade in first because that's where the championship really counts, it seems, at each campus. So, and the 7th grades play second. They'll get in. If we don't have a shootout or anything like that in our 8th grade game, we roll those games and we don't stop the clock and we keep them going. We even start a little bit earlier than we would football games or volleyball games or anything else, just because of daylight and daylight savings times. So at this point, I mean, as much as anybody would love to have middle school lights, I do not feel like it is a necessity. If someone said, Ms. Ariola, we have money and there's lights available, where would you like to place them? I would place them on my tennis courts. My tennis coach has been very gracious and very patient since Stevie's daughter was playing here years ago, and prior to that. We have 4 nice courts on the lower end of our tennis courts that have not had lights on them. And so the top 4 courts, what ends up happening is, and tennis is something that's played year round. It's not just for 6 or 7 weeks like middle school soccer is. And so, and we host a lot of tournaments, and so we have to stop play when it starts to get dark, and then we push everybody up to the top 4 courts in hopes that all those lights are working, adequately, and we can keep playing. Sometimes we've been playing until 10 o'clock at night. We don't want to keep kids there at 10 o'clock at night, not at all. So we need to make sure that if we had bottom lights, we'd be able to get those kids home very early, a lot earlier than what they're getting home now. And I think it just, with our district play that we're in right now, our coach we have grown the program. There's a JV and varsity level, the numbers, there's not a limit when it comes to JV. And so our tennis coach is out in the hallways and he's recruiting kids just to keep them busy and keep them occupied. So yeah, do we have 20 studs in soccer? No. I mean, in tennis, and we don't. But I tell you, we've got 50 to 60 kids because he recruits them just so that they can be part of a program. They need a place to play. And so we hate that the JV might get sent home early most days because there's no lights down on those lower courts where they work. And And at the end of the day, like I said, we host a lot of tournaments, and it is a fundraiser, and it is a money builder, but he puts his money right back into his program. So I'll know he donated probably $10,000, $11,000 to help finish the courts when we got a grant for the 2 middle schools. It's not about making money for him and his program to spend and have. He wants to really build down in our middle schools. And so every penny he gets, he gives his kids what they need, but he ends up buying things for the middle school tennis programs himself. So, if someone asked me, where would you like lights? I would say if we had that money, it would be down at the tennis center.
At the high school.
At the high school, yes, sir.
So what Ms. Gomez shared with me was if her concern was when kids come from other schools to play our, soccer game, they gotta leave early and miss instruction. Then she talked a little bit more about it and says we have lights, but they don't. When our kids go there, they still have to leave early. So,
Correct.
Just information for the board.
And so we're not the only school that's leaving early. They're leaving early too. We do try, when we have an opportunity to play like our Legacy and Heritage game, we'll play that at the high school under lights on the turf. That brings a lot of excitement. And so when you're starting to think about it, we're really talking about, maybe 5 Thursdays out of the year that we're talking about, because we play on Saturday. We have 3 or 4 other Saturdays. So you're talking about 5 days out of the week that they might have to leave 15 minutes early out of instruction time, or that, the 5 times that there might be a chance that the 7th graders may miss 2 minutes of play or something, or they may not need to do their shootout. We try to take it all the way to the end. If it ends in a tie, we'll end that game in a tie. We'll play a 7th grade into a shoot, 8th grade into a shootout.
So, Mr. Jurg, you and I talked a little bit. Could you help us understand? I didn't quite completely understand it, but you reminded me when we strategized to add phase 2, and it was really because of the size of our footprint, because you and I talked about other districts, our size, and maybe districts that were the size of the district we're going to become in terms of enrollment, and you reminded me that our footprint's so much larger geographically, and that there's some benefit to being in proximity to where you serve students in terms of your ability to manage downtime and take advantage of some proximity for being shorthanded, when you're shorthanded. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so,
And then also talk about the benefit of the canopies.
so as far as our square mileage in the Bexar County area, we're actually the 2nd largest square miles district in all of Bexar County. We're 296 square miles. North side is the only district that's higher at 355. Northeast is actually the 3rd biggest at 144. I know like Southwest, which I kind of compare a lot. I haven't been there in the district a long time ago. With our rural capacity, with our rural part of the district and our urban part of the district, they're like 115. So whenever we built Tradition and we had base 2 installed over there, base 2, back in the day when Mr. Selby was here, it was basically introduced to us as part of a 2-phase project. And so what we currently have right now in base 2 was the phase 1 part of that project. And we have 44 parking spots there. We run about 14 routes only right now out of there. And it came with, towards the front of it, we had the ability, towards the front, I'm talking about on the 1346 side, to like later on add the second part of it where we could possibly add more parking for buses as Anita Rose, in addition to maybe a shop and some stuff where we could not necessarily have full-time staff out there as far as mechanics and shop help, but a place, to work on stuff at that site rather than bringing everything back and forth. Base 2 turned out to be a godsend us in the fact that with Tradition, for the past couple of years, a lot of our growth obviously has come in that area. So with that satellite station, so to speak, it really has eliminated a lot of what we call deadhead miles, which of course that's extra money in fuel, that's extra man hours every day. And so just kind of giving an example, it might take, if we were having to run all those routes from base 1, right, to go all the way clear, on the other side of I-10 off 1604 where our district expands or goes to the north side, you're looking at 20 minutes of drive time for a driver to get from base 1 to base 2, right, on a school bus. So you're looking at 20 minutes there, 20 minutes back of deadhead time. So it's 40 minutes, so you're almost looking at 80 minutes a day of deadhead time that you're eliminating by having those buses run out of that base. So a satellite station base 2, what we call it. So that's been a big help there. We currently are, we're still projecting more and more growth. We do ride-alongs probably 4 and 5 times throughout the year, and so we're aware of all of even before we get the demographer's report, we're kind of already aware of what's going up and how many houses to be expecting and stuff like that. So, and what we normally try to do is we're finishing up our routes right now for next year, but what we always try to do our best at is calculate as best we can to try to add the routes this year. That'll hopefully give us some fluff to where we don't experience a whole lot of overcrowding this year, and then stay, a year or two ahead, which is, some kind of a guessing game, but we try to do the best that we can with all that. Did that answer the first part of the question?
Yeah, and before you go to the canopies, you'd also said, because ultimately all the kids, those buses still need to go by the high school.
By the high school, yeah.
So they still actually come.
They still got to come back here, right? So I mean, but the thing is, like currently right now with tradition, what we might run into in a situation where we've experienced parts where sometimes we have to go run the first half of that tradition route, bring them back, and then go get the second half of that tradition group like in the morning, and then bring them all back, and then pick up all the Heritage High School kids on what should be the second round and ends up the third round, but just depending on number of kids on routes and driver availability, stuff like that, that's kind of the way that it works. So, but either way, essentially they have to come back to the high school, but you're still eliminating tons of dead-end miles because now they only have to go back, they start in their route at base 2 rather than opposed from base 1. So you save a lot there.
So I interpreted that as they're coming by essentially base 1, so you can set up a service pattern where they're not making an extra trip just for service because they're going by base 1 every day anyway.
Correct. And that's what they're doing. I mean, we make it work, right? I mean, we make all that work. And a lot of it's just scheduling and staying on top of all that. And John and the staff back there doing a fantastic job of keeping track of our PMs and stuff like that. But you do have times, right, where we get the write-ups and stuff like that at the end of the day, or 2 days later from base 2, okay, hey, we're in the middle of the day, we get them, now we got to send out people to go to base 2 and back and forth. So it's not a perfect system, but we make it work the best we can. But yeah, as far as a location for base 1, I think it's in a prime location, like you said, it's in the epicenter of our district, and so I love the area where we're at right there. And at base 1, we have the capability of parking 130 buses. We currently have, I think, 123 buses there, but the rest are all like light fleet that we service out of there, which is beneficial for the high school and having it located there, because I know we have a lot of coaches, career tech, they just come over, they pop over right then and there. I know as an ex-coach at Southwest, we would have to drive, you have to go on your breaks, your conference periods, to drive 10, 15 minutes, 20 minutes to go pick up a bus. Those things, Legacy and Heritage have to do that to a degree, but the high school, everything's right next door. It's beautifully located there, so we don't have a whole lot of issues with that right there. The canopy part, so with base 2 not having any kind of like shop area at all, we do have 2 diesel pumps out there and a DEF tank that our fueler over at base 2 takes care of all that for us, but we don't have any kind of shop stuff out there. Like right now we have 6 bays at transportation at base 1. So the problem arises is that one of those bays is used up daily by one of our shop helpers who's doing the PMs, every day. Then we also have 4 mechanics. So there'll be buses in there in every bay. And the problem arises where you get into a project and you got something torn down, and then you realize, oh, you got to order this part now. And working with Miss Judy and Stevie and Mr. Toscano, we've done a really good job of getting some open POs now where we're able to get those parts a little bit quicker. Sometimes you have to wait a little bit longer, right? So the longer you have to wait on those parts, that bus is taking up that bay. So with the addition of these canopies, at the end of each end of whatever of a bay, now we have some flexibility to where we can kind of do some outside work, and give us some more capacity to where, that other bus stuck in that bay, okay, we can still get something in close to the vicinity, close to our tools, close to everything, where we can keep going on other projects that need to be tended to. Remember back in the day, old Robert Hadaway, he preferred to work outside, whenever he was there.
You told me about putting the bus on nose to nose.
Well, and we can't technically do that. Like most of the shops that we have visited, they have that capability, right? The structure of the shop itself is so that where the middle of the whole entire shop, they put, they'll organize, into, just whatever, like jacks to, all the different kind of tools they need in the middle. And it's wide enough, the shop is wide enough to where they can actually pull in 2 buses inside, right, nose to nose.
And you have your tools in the middle.
Yes,
everything in the
sir.
middle.
Yes, sir. And everything's really easy to
So, but
access.
the canopies will still, well, what I'm understanding, the canopies will allow you to pull in nose to nose to do that type of work, but still at the end of the day, you're gonna have to move a bus out to close the doors because you can't leave the doors open.
Yes, sir. And you can even have you don't necessarily have the bus because quite honestly, there's not a lot of wiggle room in between the front nose of the bus and the back of the bus on those doors.
Right.
All the canopies do is allow us to provide us extra areas where we can get in there and work comfortably, and if the bus is parked outside. So if you because the length of a bus pretty much takes up a whole entire bay, right, where we're at right now. But those canopies, what they'll do is you can pull them up, you're under the shade, you don't have to worry about the weather as much, and you can still get to everything. There won't be an actual bus, 2 buses parked in that bay, but you'll have outside.
You're trying to duplicate a 2-bay bus garage by having canopies and the nose sticking in, so into the center. You're trying to make that what we have adequate to do that type of work.
Yes, sir.
But you're still opening up to the environment.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. It's just, and in talking with the shop members, and John and stuff, I mean, we know that necessarily, maybe not due to the geographical area, maybe, I mean, there's probably not feasible to actually add on to the whole entire shop. But this at least gives us an area to where we can just park under and still get more work done while another bus is right there today.
So how long do you think it'd take before, as the district grows, that we outgrow that bus growth?
I mean, what is the population supposed to be in like 10 years? I mean, our 17,000. So if we're at 10,000 right now, and historically, minus last year, historically, we run and we service anywhere between 50 and 55%, of the students. I mean,
How many days do y'all have those all 6 bays full of buses doing maintenance on?
well, the maintenance bays every single day. I mean, mostly every day you walk by, I mean, we have all 6 of our bays filled up. Because it might not be buses, it might be white fleet, it might be the carts that Chief talks about, it might be, we're in charge of over 200 fleet, for the district. So it's not just our buses, we have everybody.
So if we build a south base 3, how many buses are gonna be removed from base locations inventory?
Well, so let me go to my numbers real quick, just kind of for I need some of those cheaters you got over there, man.
Do you need them?
So just like for the I'm good. So like, if we moved it down to the south side of it, we probably would service like Harmony, Highland Forest, and again, without actually looking at the whole type deal. Right now, Harmony's got 6 buses, Highland Forest has 5, Salado area has 9, Legacy has 13, so, it would all depend on how we kind of restructured everything,
So you're talking about moving about the same number of buses that you currently house in base 2?
Yes, sir.
Out of there.
Yes, sir.
So you're gonna lose 40 buses of the 123 that you have, which means that you can take up more of that parking area with additional facility. So you could realistically build 4 more bays on your mechanic shop because you're gonna lose the inventory there.
Yes, sir.
And by adding the outside canopies, you're gonna be able to move your PM work completely away from a bay, which opens another bay of the 6 that you currently have for that kind of work.
Possibly.
Yeah. Okay.
I know that's just one thing I know when Robert was there. I know we talked about way back in the day whenever everything was built, and then seeing that, like I said, everything is just straight along the narrow part right there. It just creates some issues, whatever. But like what you're talking about, everything when you can pull them in nose to nose and get everything wide enough and have everything on the inside, you don't have to worry about any elements at all. You have everything nice and neat, and you have everything right down the middle to where it's all centralized, you know?
Yeah.
Right now, and you've been by there, anybody that goes by there, it's a bay, and then all of our other parts are, that we pick and pull from, or our tools and everything is kind of in rows, you know, so it's kind of like, you know, clutter, and then you've got the buses, and you've got some more organized chaos, you know, so to speak, and then another bus
Right.
and stuff like that.
It's not real efficient right now.
Correct.
What exactly is located at base 2?
An office, they have a double wide office over there, and we have 3 offices, and then just a small break room, a men's and women's restroom. So we have one of our special ed McKinney Venable routers and dispatchers works early in the morning. And then there's we have a supervisor's office, whatever we bounce back and forth. I spend a lot of time there in the summertime for routing stuff. And then we have another part where our other router goes in the summer when we have all of our router meetings. And then that's pretty much that's there. Then there are the 2 diesel pumps and then the DEF pump. And then maintenance has a metal building right there. And we'll keep some of our stuff in there too, you know, but that's kind of a shared space, but we don't keep a whole lot in it.
And you don't do any big maintenance or anything out there? It
Okay.
comes back to the
Yes, ma'am.
main?
And like Mr. Descondo was saying, that's stuff where we'll let them know at a time, hey, you know, pretty much everything is scheduled out monthly. We use it on Service Finder. And so John, also our shop foreman, we keep a spreadsheet. So we know when all of our regular services are due. We have everything already kind of, we know when it's coming up. We'll get with Verna, our parts clerk. She'll make sure that all of our filters and everything needed for those services are ordered. She sets everything out, and then we'll make sure that they either drop a bus and take a bus back, or we have to go back and pick them up and bring it back.
All right. Thank you for that info.
Thank you, sir. I'm done. Anybody? Everybody else?
I don't think so.
Everybody done? I guess we'll,
Thank you, Carlos.
thank you, Carlos. Appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
I guess we're ready to adjourn. Everybody-
Just have to get back on. How do we do that? Are we gonna entertain that or
I guess we can talk about it. Yeah.
another time?
Yeah.
Right here?
Yeah.
We're not doing that tonight.
All right, have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All right, we're done.
Yes, sir.
You can't stop.
They'll take care of you like we did last year. When she tell me when you want it done.
Okay, the MCT, which you've been using. I'm good with that. But I think it's a little bit cheaper. That's true. Concrete. Yep. You can definitely talk.
Yeah, get it to the guys. That thing is nice. He's taking it as a concrete. I don't think it is. It's just
That was bid.
I went ready.
See, that was bid around 2017. So add 5% to me, yeah. And I would add another 10% this year. Exactly what that is. We're closer to.